Welcome, dear listener, and let yourself settle into comfort as we embark on a journey across the cosmos. From the golden realm of Asgard to the furthest reaches of space, following the story of a god who would learn what it truly means to be worthy. This is the tale of Thor Odinson, the god of thunder, a being of immense power who would discover that true strength comes not from the hammer you wield or the lightning you command, but from the choices you make and the people you protect. So close your eyes now, let your breathing slow to a gentle rhythm, and allow yourself to drift on the currents of this story like a leaf floating on a peaceful stream, knowing that you need not hold on to every detail, for this tale will be here whether you sleep or wake, and its purpose tonight is simply to carry you gently into restful dreams. Our story begins not on Earth, but in a realm beyond mortal understanding, a place where the impossible becomes mundane, and where gods walk among halls of gold beneath skies that shimmer with colours Earth has never known. Asgard, the realm eternal, floated in space like a golden jewel among the stars, connected to 9 other realms through the branches of Yggdrasil, the world tree, and protected by the all-seeing gaze of Heimdall, who stood eternal watch at the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge that served as gateway between worlds. This was a place of wonder and majesty, where warriors trained in vast courtyards, where feasts celebrated victories that would become legends, and where the royal family of Odin ruled with wisdom accumulated over thousands of years. Into this realm of gods and heroes, a child was born to Odin the All-Father and his queen Frigga, a son with golden hair who entered the world destined for greatness, whose first cries were said to have echoed with the rumble of thunder, announcing to all the 9 realms that the heir to Asgard's throne had arrived. They named him Thor, and from his earliest days it was clear that he carried within him the power and potential to one day become the mightiest warrior Asgard had ever known, a protector of the realms who would stand against any threat to peace and order. But Thor would not grow up alone, for Odin, in his wisdom and perhaps his sentimentality, had taken in another child, a baby found in a Jotunheim temple after a great battle with the frost giants, a child of the enemy whom Odin saw not as a monster, but as an opportunity for peace, a bridge between 2 peoples who had known only war for millennia. This second child, small and blue-skinned when Odin found him, was transformed by Odin's magic to appear Asgardian, and he was raised alongside Thor as a brother, given the name Loki and all the privileges of a prince of Asgard, though he would never know his true heritage until the knowledge came at the worst possible moment and poisoned his heart with betrayal and rage. Thor and Loki grew up together in the palace, 2 brothers who could not have been more different in temperament and inclination, with Thor gravitating toward physical pursuits and warrior training, while Loki developed an affinity for magic and mischief, studying sorcery with their mother Frigga, who was herself a powerful practitioner of Asgardian magic. Their childhood was filled with adventures and competitions, with Thor usually winning contests of strength, while Loki triumphed in games requiring cunning and deception. And though they were different, there was genuine love between them in those early years, before jealousy and resentment began to corrode Loki's heart and turn him toward darker paths. Thor was bold and brash, even as a child, charging into every situation with confidence that sometimes crossed into recklessness, while Loki learned to approach problems sideways, to use illusion and manipulation to achieve what Thor accomplished through direct force. and their father Odin watched both sons with a mixture of pride and concern, seeing in Thor the makings of a great king, but worrying about his arrogance, and seeing in Loki brilliance and potential, but worrying about the shadows that seemed to gather around him. The years passed in Asgard's timeless way, where centuries could flow by like mere moments. And immortal beings measured their lives not in years but in ages and eras. And Thor grew into a formidable warrior, tall and powerful, wielding strength that could shatter stone and summon lightning from clear skies. He gathered around him a loyal band of friends who would become known as the Warriors Three, consisting of Fandral the Dashing with his quick wit and quicker blade, Hogun the Grim, whose serious demeanour hid a fierce loyalty, and Volstagg the Voluminous, whose appetite for both food and battle was legendary, and these were joined by the Lady Sif, a warrior woman whose skill with sword and shield matched any man in Asgard, and who perhaps harboured feelings for Thor that went beyond mere friendship, though Thor, in his self-absorption, seemed not to notice or chose not to acknowledge them. Together, this band of warriors fought across the Nine Realms, putting down rebellions and protecting the innocent, building legends that would be told in Asgard's halls for generations, and with each victory Thor's confidence grew, his certainty in his own greatness expanding until it crossed the line from healthy self-assurance into dangerous arrogance. He began to believe that he was invincible, that there was no foe he could not defeat, no challenge he could not overcome. And this hubris would eventually lead him to the moment that would change his life forever and set him on the path to becoming not just a warrior, but a true hero. The day of Thor's coronation arrived at last, the ceremony that would see him officially named heir to the throne of Asgard and given the responsibilities that came with that title. And all of Asgard gathered to witness this momentous occasion in the great throne room where Odin sat upon his high seat with the great spear, Gungnir, in his hand and the weight of ages in his eyes. Thor arrived resplendent in his finest armour, his red cape flowing behind him, Mjolnir the enchanted hammer at his side, and confidence radiating from every step as he walked toward his destiny, believing that this was merely the confirmation of what everyone already knew, that he was ready to rule, ready to lead, ready to take his place as the greatest king Asgard had ever known. But even as the ceremony began, even as Odin raised Gungnir to speak the words that would formalize Thor's position, alarms rang out through the palace, warning of an intrusion into the weapons vault deep below the throne room where Asgard kept its most dangerous artifacts, including the casket of ancient winters, a weapon of terrible power stolen from the frost giants of Jotunheim centuries ago during the war that had nearly destroyed both realms. The ceremony halted immediately as guards rushed to investigate, and they found evidence that frost giants had somehow breached Asgard's defenses and penetrated to the very heart of the realm, though they had been destroyed by the destroyer. An enchanted automaton that served as the vault's final guardian before they could steal the casket and return it to their king. This violation of Asgard's sanctity and security enraged Thor, who took it as a personal insult and a challenge that demanded immediate and overwhelming response. And despite Odin's counseling of caution and patience, despite his father's insistence that they needed to understand how this breach had occurred before taking action, Thor's pride and anger overwhelmed his judgment, and he began to plan a response that was both reckless and foolish. He went to his friends, to Fandral and Hogun and Volstagg and Sif, and he proposed that they travel to Jotunheim themselves, confront King Laufey and the Frost Giants in their own realm, and make it clear that any further aggression against Asgard would be met with devastating retaliation. And though his friends expressed reservations about defying Odin's implied command to wait and not escalate the situation, they were swayed by Thor's passionate arguments and their own loyalty to him. Loki, who had his own secret reasons for wanting Thor to make this mistake, encouraged the plan while pretending to advise caution, using his silver tongue to manipulate the situation so that Thor would commit fully to this course of action that could only end in disaster. Together, the six of them went to Heimdall, the all-seeing guardian of the Bifrost, and demanded passage to Jotunheim. And though Heimdall could see the folly in their plan, though he knew that Odin would not approve, his loyalty was to the throne, and Thor was the prince. So he opened the Bifrost and sent them hurtling across the cosmos to the frozen wasteland of the Frost Giants' home. Jotunheim was a realm of ice and darkness, a frozen hell where the Frost Giants dwelled in ruins that spoke of ancient grandeur now fallen into decay. And when Thor and his companions arrived and demanded an audience with Laufey, the meeting quickly deteriorated from tense negotiation to open hostility. Thor's arrogance and barely contained aggression, combined with the Frost Giants' resentment and desire for revenge against Asgard for centuries of humiliation, created a volatile situation that needed only the smallest spark to explode into violence. And that spark came when one of the Frost Giants made a threatening move and Thor responded with Mjolnir, striking the giant down and triggering a battle that quickly spiraled out of control. The fight that followed was chaotic and desperate, with Thor and his friends vastly outnumbered by Frost Giants on their home territory. And though they fought with skill and courage, though Thor's lightning and Mjolnir dealt devastating blows to their enemies, they would certainly have been overwhelmed and killed if not for Odin's intervention, arriving at the last moment on his 8-legged horse Sleipnir and using his power to halt the battle and rescue his foolish son and his companions. Odin's fury at Thor's disobedience was terrible to behold, and his humiliation at having to humble himself before Laufey and acknowledge that Thor's actions were unauthorized and inexcusable only made that anger burn hotter, and when they returned to Asgard through the Bifrost, Thor would face consequences that he had never imagined possible. In the throne room before all the court, with his friends and brother watching, Odin pronounced judgment on Thor's actions, declaring that his son had shown himself unworthy of his power and position through his arrogance, his disobedience, and his inability to value peace over his own pride. Thor, still not understanding the gravity of his mistakes, still believing he had been right to confront the Frost Giants and that his father was being unjust, argued and protested, claiming he was defending Asgard's honor and showing strength in the face of aggression. But his words only confirmed for Odin that Thor had learned nothing and was not ready for the responsibility of ruling or even for the power he currently possessed. The punishment Odin pronounced was shocking in its severity. Thor would be stripped of his power, stripped of Mjolnir, and banished to Midgard, what mortals called Earth, where he would live as a mortal until such time as he proved himself worthy once more, if such a time ever came. Odin then placed an enchantment on Mjolnir itself, speaking words that would echo across the years. "Whosoever holds this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor." And with that pronouncement, he tore the power from his son, ripped away the godly essence that had defined Thor for his entire existence, and cast him through the Bifrost to earth, hurling him across space to land in the New Mexico desert like a falling star, powerless and mortal and completely unprepared for what was to come. Thor's arrival on Earth was witnessed by a small group of scientists studying atmospheric anomalies in the desert, consisting of astrophysicist Jane Foster, who had dedicated her career to studying theoretical wormholes and Einstein-Rosen bridges, her intern Darcy Lewis, who was more interested in college credit than science but provided comic relief and surprising insight, and Dr. Eric Selvig, Jane's mentor and colleague, who approached their research with cautious scientific skepticism. They were chasing storm readings that defied conventional explanation, massive energy discharges that appeared to be creating localized atmospheric disturbances, and they arrived just in time to see the Bifrost deposit Thor in the desert. The impact creating a crater and light show that Jane immediately recognized as connected to her research, potentially proof of the interdimensional bridges she had theorized. In the chaos and confusion of the moment, Jane accidentally hit Thor with her van, not once but twice, as he stumbled around disoriented and powerless. And this inauspicious first meeting between the god and the mortal, who would eventually capture his heart, set the tone for Thor's early experiences on Earth, marked by confusion, humiliation, and a growing realization that being mortal was far more difficult and unpleasant than he had ever imagined from his privileged position as an immortal god. Thor's initial behavior on Earth was absurd and problematic, as he retained all his memories and personality but none of his power, leading him to act like the prince he believed himself to be, while possessing no ability to back up his imperious demands and grandiose proclamations. He demanded coffee and smashed the cup in appreciation, as was Asgardian custom. He asked for horses to transport him to the nearest wormhole or Einstein-Rosen bridge so he could return to Asgard. He spoke of Bifrost and the 9 realms to people who thought he was suffering from delusions or perhaps had escaped from a mental institution. And generally, he made himself seem like either a madman or someone engaging in an elaborate role-play fantasy. Jane and her colleagues initially thought he might be dangerous or unstable, but there was something compelling about his sincerity, something in his eyes that suggested he genuinely believed everything he was saying, and Jane in particular found herself drawn to him, despite his apparent insanity, sensing somehow that his impossible stories might have some connection to the impossible phenomena she was studying. The situation became more complicated when SHIELD, the Strategic Homeland Intervention, Enforcement and Logistics Division, arrived to confiscate all of Jane's research and equipment after detecting the same energy signature that had brought Thor to Earth, taking everything she had worked for years to gather and leaving her with nothing but standard platitudes about national security and compensation that would never come. The crisis that would transform Thor from arrogant prince to humble hero began when he learned that Mjolnir had also fallen to Earth, landing in the desert some distance from where he had arrived and creating its own crater and gathering its own crowd of curious locals who attempted to lift the hammer and claim it as a prize, none of them succeeding because none of them were worthy by the standards of Odin's enchantment. Thor, hearing of the hammer's location, immediately set out to reclaim it, believing that once he held Mjolnir again, his power would return and this nightmare of mortality would end. and he infiltrated the shield facility that had been constructed around the impact site, fighting his way through security with skill that surprised everyone because though he lacked godly strength, he retained centuries of combat training and technique. He reached Mjolnir in the center of the crater, grasped the handle with confidence and expectation, and pulled with all his mortal strength, but the hammer did not move, would not budge, remained as immovable as a mountain. And Thor's anguished realization that he truly was unworthy, that his father's judgment had been just and his punishment was deserved, broke something inside him that had needed to break, cracking the shell of arrogance and pride to reveal the capacity for growth and change that had always existed beneath. In Asgard, events were transpiring that Thor knew nothing about, as Loki discovered the truth of his heritage through a confrontation with Odin that revealed he was not truly Odin's son, but rather the abandoned child of Laufey, king of the frost giants, taken as a baby and raised Asgardian in a deception that had lasted Loki's entire life. This revelation shattered Loki's sense of identity and purpose, explaining why he had always felt different, why Odin had always seemed to favor Thor, why he would never truly belong or be accepted as equal to his golden brother, and the bitterness and rage this knowledge produced drove Loki to embrace his role as the unloved second son and scheme to prove his worth through deception and manipulation rather than honest merit. When Odin collapsed into the Odin sleep, a periodic state of rest necessary for the All-Father to maintain his power, Loki seized control of Asgard, claiming the throne as regent and beginning to execute a plan that would eliminate Thor permanently, cement his own position, and finally earn him the recognition and respect he felt he deserved. He sent the Destroyer, the same enchanted automaton that had defended the weapon's vault, to Earth with orders to kill Thor, and this nearly indestructible engine of destruction carved a path of devastation toward the small New Mexico town where Thor was staying with Jane and her colleagues. The arrival of the Destroyer represented an impossible threat for a powerless Thor to face, but it also created the moment of truth that would define who he truly was beneath the arrogance and privilege. As the Destroyer advanced, and Thor's friends from Asgard, who had defied Loki's orders and come to Earth to warn Thor of his brother's schemes, fought desperately to slow the automaton down, Thor made a choice that the old Thor would never have made, a choice that prioritized others over himself and accepted sacrifice as preferable to allowing innocents to be harmed. He approached the Destroyer unarmed and offered himself in exchange for the safety of the townspeople, asking Loki through the automaton to take his life and spare everyone else. And this moment of genuine selflessness and humility, this willingness to die to protect others, proved to Mjolnir and the enchantment Odin had placed upon it that Thor had finally learned what it meant to be worthy. The hammer flew to his hand from miles away, lightning erupted from the sky, and Thor was transformed back into his full power. No longer the arrogant prince who had been banished, but something better. Someone who had learned that true strength comes from protecting others rather than glorifying yourself. And with his power restored, he made short work of the Destroyer and prepared to return to Asgard to confront Loki and set things right. His goodbye to Jane was bittersweet, as they had begun to develop real feelings for each other during his time on Earth, and the prospect of separation, with no guarantee of reunion, pained them both But duty called, and Thor could not ignore his responsibility to Asgard and to stopping whatever plan Loki was executing. He returned through the Bifrost with his friends to find Asgard in chaos, and Loki's plot revealed in full. The trickster prince had manipulated events to allow Laufey and a small group of frost giants to infiltrate Asgard and attempt to kill Odin in his sleep, planning to then kill Laufey himself and claim credit for saving the All-Father and stopping a frost giant plot, proving himself worthy and eliminating both his birth father and any chance of Thor returning to challenge his rule. But Thor's unexpected return disrupted this plan, and the confrontation between the brothers on the Rainbow Bridge as Loki attempted to use the Bifrost as a weapon to destroy all of Jotunheim and commit genocide against the frost giants to prove his loyalty to Asgard forced Thor to make an agonizing choice between saving an entire realm of people, even enemies, and preserving the Bifrost that was his only connection to Jane and Earth. He chose to save Jotunheim, destroying the Bifrost with Mjolnir and preventing the genocide, and both he and Loki fell toward the abyss of space, saved only by Odin awakening and catching them at the last moment. But Loki, seeing in his father's eyes not the pride he had hoped for, but disappointment and perhaps pity, chose to let go and fall into the void rather than face the judgment and the future that awaited him. The years that followed were difficult for Thor. As he mourned his brother, who he believed to be dead, grappled with his new understanding of responsibility and leadership, and missed Jane with an intensity that surprised him, having never felt such connection to another person before. He dedicated himself to restoring peace across the 9 realms. As the destruction of the Bifrost had emboldened various factions and forces to challenge Asgard's authority, and he grew into the role of protector and future king, tempering his warrior instincts with wisdom and learning to seek peaceful solutions before resorting to force. This period of growth and maturity prepared him for what would come next, when Loki reappeared, not dead but twisted by his time in the void and whatever he had experienced there, and arrived on Earth with an alien army and plans to conquer and rule, forcing Thor to return to Midgard and join with Earth's mightiest heroes to stop his brother's schemes and save the world from subjugation. The Avengers initiative brought Thor into contact with remarkable mortals who reminded him of why Earth and its people were worth protecting, warriors in their own right who fought not with godly power but with courage and ingenuity and sheer determination. His initial encounters with Iron Man and Captain America were tense and marked by conflict as different fighting styles and philosophies clashed, but eventually they learned to work together, combining Thor's raw power with their tactics and technology to face threats none of them could handle alone. The Battle of New York tested all of them, pushing them to their limits as Loki opened a portal above the city and poured through an army of Chitauri aliens bent on conquest, and Thor fought alongside his new allies, protecting civilians and battling the invasion, while simultaneously trying to reach his brother and somehow bring him back from the darkness that had consumed him. The victory was hard-won and costly, but it proved that Earth had defenders capable of standing against cosmic threats, and when Thor returned to Asgard with Loki prisoner and the Tesseract secured, he carried with him hope that perhaps the 9 realms could find peace, and that he might someday find a way back to Jane and the life he had glimpsed during his time among mortals. But peace was not to be. As new threats emerged from the darkness between stars, and the dark elves, ancient enemies of Asgard, thought long extinct, awakened to reclaim the ether, a weapon of terrible power that had bonded itself to Jane Foster in her researches and pulled her into the cosmic conflicts that Thor had hoped to keep separate from her. The invasion of Asgard by Malekith and his forces resulted in devastating losses, including the death of Frigga, Thor's mother, and the one person who had truly understood both her sons and loved them without reservation or condition. Her loss devastated Thor and Loki both, creating a moment of genuine shared grief that briefly united the brothers in their desire for vengeance against those responsible, and Thor made the controversial decision to break Loki out of prison and ally with him to stop Malekith, trusting his brother despite every reason not to, because the alternative was allowing their mother's killer to escape justice and potentially destroy all the 9 realms. Their partnership was uneasy and marked by Loki's constant scheming and Thor's wariness, but together they managed to separate the ether from Jane and confront Malekith in a final battle that appeared to cost Loki his life, though Thor would later learn this death was yet another of his brother's illusions, and that Loki had somehow survived and replaced Odin on Asgard's throne through deception and magic that would have consequences reaching far into the future. The next years brought new challenges as Ultron emerged and the Avengers faced threats from within as well as without. And Thor's visions during Wanda's mental manipulation showed him glimpses of Ragnarok, the prophesied end of Asgard, and revealed to him that the Infinity Stones, cosmic artifacts of immense power, were being gathered by some unknown force for purposes that could only be catastrophic. He left Earth to investigate, searching for answers about who was collecting the stones and what they intended. And this quest kept him away during the events that would tear the Avengers apart, preventing him from taking a side in the civil war that divided his friends and allies. His search proved frustratingly fruitless, as the conspiracy he sought remained hidden, but it prepared him for what came next, when he returned to Asgard to find Loki alive and impersonating their father, and discovered, through confronting his brother, that Odin had been banished to Earth and left vulnerable and dying. Their journey to find Odin and seek his counsel one last time brought them to Norway, where the All-Father waited in peaceful acceptance of his coming end, and his final warning to his sons revealed a truth they had never suspected. They had a sister, Hela, goddess of death and Odin's firstborn, who had been imprisoned for millennia because her ambition and bloodlust had grown too extreme even for Asgard's warrior culture, and Odin's death would break that imprisonment and free her to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers. Hela's return was catastrophic and immediate, as the goddess of death emerged from her prison at the moment of Odin's passing and confronted her brothers, demonstrating power that dwarfed their own by catching and crushing Mjolnir, destroying Thor's hammer as if it were glass, and severing his connection to the weapon that had defined him for centuries. She cast Thor and Loki from the Bifrost as they attempted to flee, scattering them across space, and proceeded to Asgard, where she slaughtered the Warriors 3 and anyone else who opposed her, claiming the throne and declaring her intention to use Asgard's armies to conquer the 9 realms and beyond, as they had in ancient times under her leadership. Thor found himself stranded on Sakaar, a bizarre garbage planet ruled by the Grand Master, an ancient being who entertained himself with gladiatorial contests, and discovered that the Grand Master's champion was none other than the Hulk, who had been on Sakaar for years after the events of Ultron and had remained in Hulk form for so long that Banner's consciousness had been suppressed nearly to the point of non-existence. The reunion was both joyful and complicated, as Thor needed Hulk's help to escape and return to Asgard, but Hulk was content on Sakaar, where he was celebrated and powerful rather than feared and hated as he was on Earth, and convincing him to leave and help fight Hela required drawing Banner back to the surface, knowing that this might mean losing the Hulk's power when they needed it most. The journey back to Asgard brought together an unlikely team consisting of Thor, Banner, Loki, and Valkyrie, one of the legendary shield maidens who had fought Hela millennia ago and survived when all her sisters died, living in exile and alcoholic depression on Sakaar rather than face the trauma of that ancient battle. Together they returned to liberate Asgard from Hela's rule, but the battle that followed revealed that Hela drew her power from Asgard itself, making her nearly invincible as long as she stood on Asgardian soil and rendering any attempt to defeat her in direct combat futile. Thor, in consultation with Loki and remembering their father's final words that Asgard was not a place but a people, made the hardest decision of his life, accepting that the only way to stop Hela was to fulfill the Ragnarok prophecy and destroy Asgard itself, sacrificing their home to save their people. He sent Loki to the vault to resurrect Surtur, the fire demon prophesied to bring about Ragnarok, while he and the others evacuated the Asgardian people to the Bifrost and fought to hold Hela back long enough for everyone to escape. And in the final confrontation before Asgard's destruction, Thor discovered that his power had never truly come from Mjolnir, but had always been within him, needing only acceptance and confidence to manifest. And he fought Hela with lightning and thunder and the full fury of the god of thunder, unbounded by any weapon or tool. Asgard's destruction was both tragedy and triumph, as Surtur rose and brought fire and devastation that consumed Hela and the realm entire, but the people survived, escaping on a commandeered ship to seek a new home among the stars. And Thor accepted the crown and responsibilities of kingship not in golden halls but on a refugee vessel, leading a people without a homeland but still possessed of hope and determination to rebuild. This moment of hard-won peace lasted only briefly, as the ship was intercepted by a much larger vessel, and Thanos, the Mad Titan, who had been manipulating events and gathering Infinity Stones in preparation for his plan to eliminate half of all life in the universe, arrived with his forces to slaughter half the Asgardian refugees and claim the Space Stone that Loki had taken from Asgard's vault before its destruction. The battle that followed was hopeless from the start, as Thanos and his lieutenants vastly outmatched the depleted and exhausted Asgardians, and Thor was forced to watch helplessly as Heimdall used the last of his power to send Hulk to Earth as a warning before being killed, and as Loki attempted to kill Thanos with a hidden blade in a desperate last-minute attack that the Titans saw through and countered, ending Loki's life for real this time, with Thor forced to watch his brother die and unable to prevent it or even avenge it. Thanos' destruction of the Asgardian ship left Thor floating in space among the wreckage and the bodies of his people, presumably dead but saved by his godly constitution, and he was found by the Guardians of the Galaxy, a ragtag group of cosmic heroes who picked up the ship's distress signal and arrived too late to help, but in time to rescue Thor from the void. His drive for revenge and his determination to kill Thanos at any cost led him to Nidavellir, the realm of the dwarves who had forged Mjolnir centuries ago, where he hoped to commission a new weapon powerful enough to kill even a titan wielding infinity stones. But he found Nidavellir dark and dead, its forges cold, its people slaughtered by Thanos years earlier in his quest to ensure no weapon could be made that might threaten him. Only Atri, the king, survived, spared by Thanos to live with the guilt of having created the Infinity Gauntlet, the device that would allow Thanos to wield all 6 stones simultaneously, and Thor convinced the broken dwarf to help him forge one last weapon, a hammer-axe hybrid called Stormbreaker that would be powerful enough to channel Thor's full abilities and potentially kill Thanos even with a completed gauntlet. The forging required restarting Nidavellir's dying star, and Thor endured the full force of the stellar radiation to hold open the forge long enough for the weapon to be completed, nearly dying in the process, but emerging with a weapon of terrible power and a burning determination to use it to avenge everyone he had lost. The final battle in Wakanda brought together Earth's heroes and the Wakandan armies against Thanos' forces in a desperate attempt to prevent him from claiming the Mind Stone from Vision's forehead, and Thor arrived at the last moment when the battle seemed lost, descending from the sky with lightning and fury, wielding Stormbreaker with devastating effect against the alien armies that had seemed unstoppable moments before. His arrival turned the tide and brought hope back to the desperate defenders. But that hope was short-lived, as Thanos himself arrived and could not be stopped even by the combined might of all Earth's heroes fighting together. Thor's moment came when he hurled Stormbreaker with all his strength at Thanos, who had just completed the gauntlet and was about to snap his fingers, and the axe flew true, penetrating the power of all 6 Infinity Stones and burying itself in Thanos' chest, a mortal wound that should have ended the Mad Titan's threat forever. But Thor, driven by rage and desire for Thanos to know who had killed him and why, buried the blade in Thanos' chest rather than his head, giving the Titan time to speak his final words, "You should have gone for the head," before snapping his fingers anyway and unleashing the snap that erased half of all life in the universe in an instant, turning heroes and innocents to dust and ash, while the survivors watched helplessly and tried to comprehend the scale of what had just happened. The 5 years that followed the snap broke Thor in ways that centuries of battle and loss never had, as the guilt of his failure, the knowledge that he had been within seconds of preventing the greatest catastrophe in history and had failed through his own need for vengeance rather than efficiency, consumed him and drove him into depression and despair that no amount of alcohol or distraction could numb. He withdrew to New Asgard, the settlement of surviving Asgardians established in Norway under Valkyrie's practical leadership, and he let himself fall apart, gaining weight, losing himself in video games and beer, abdicating his responsibilities as king, and becoming a shadow of the mighty warrior who had fought in Wakanda. His friends tried to help, but he pushed them away, unable to face their disappointment or his own failure, unable to imagine a future where things could be better or where he deserved happiness or peace. And when Scott Lang returned from the quantum realm with the possibility of time travel and a plan to undo the snap, Thor initially resisted involvement because hope seemed more painful than despair, and the risk of failing again seemed unbearable. But eventually his loyalty to his lost friends and his desperate need for redemption overcame his depression, and he joined the time heist despite his compromised physical and mental state traveling back to 2013 Asgard to retrieve the Reality Stone during the events of the Dark World. The journey to 2013 Asgard was especially painful for Thor because it meant returning to a time when his mother was still alive, when Asgard still stood, when so much that had been lost still existed, and the temptation to stay, or to warn his past self, or to somehow prevent all the tragedy that was coming, was overwhelming. His encounter with Frigga, who immediately saw through his disguise and recognized that this strange, broken man was her son from some dark future, gave Thor a moment of grace and comfort that he desperately needed, as his mother reassured him that everyone fails at who they're supposed to be, but that the measure of a person is whether they can succeed at being who they are, and she told him to stop trying to be the perfect king or warrior and simply be himself, flaws and failures and all. This conversation, brief and bittersweet, because Thor knew it would be erased when they returned the stones and that his mother would die, not knowing she had given her son the strength to continue, restored something in Thor that had been broken, giving him the courage to face Thanos one final time. The final battle against Thanos and his armies from 2014 brought forward, through time, when Nebula's connection to her past self revealed the Avengers' plan was the largest and most desperate fight Thor had ever participated in, with heroes emerging through portals from across the universe to stand together against annihilation, and Thor fought with renewed purpose alongside Steve Rogers, who proved himself worthy of Mjolnir, which had been retrieved from 2013, creating the surreal and magnificent image of two worthy warriors wielding hammer and axe together against impossible odds. Victory came at terrible cost, as Tony Stark sacrificed himself to wield the Infinity Stones and snap Thanos and his forces out of existence, giving his life to undo the damage Thanos had caused and save the universe. And his death reminded Thor that being a hero wasn't about being perfect or never failing, but about making the hard choices and doing whatever it took to protect others. The funeral and the aftermath brought closure and new beginnings, as the Avengers who survived went their separate ways to build new lives and honor those they had lost. Thor, recognizing that he was not in the right mental or emotional state to lead the Asgardians, and that Valkyrie had been doing excellent work in his absence, formally passed the crown to her and accepted that being king of Asgard was never truly what he wanted or what he was best suited for. And when the Guardians of the Galaxy prepared to depart on new adventures, Thor asked to join them, seeking purpose and redemption among the stars rather than trying to rebuild what had been lost, and beginning a new chapter of his long life that would be defined not by what he ruled or what weapon he carried, but by who he chose to be and what he chose to fight for. And so the God of Thunder sailed into the cosmos with new friends and new purpose, no longer the arrogant prince who had been cast down to earth decades earlier, no longer even the king who had tried to lead his people through impossible circumstances, but simply Thor, a warrior seeking to do good and protect the innocent and perhaps find some measure of peace with his past and hope for his future. His journey had taken him from the heights of Asgardian privilege to the depths of despair and loss, had taught him lessons about worthiness and responsibility and the true meaning of strength. And though he carried scars both visible and invisible from all he had endured and all he had lost, he continued forward, because that is what heroes do, not because they are perfect or because victory is guaranteed, but because someone must stand against the darkness, and because the people we love and the ideals we hold deserve defenders, even when the cost is high and the outcome uncertain. And now, dear listener, as Thor's story reaches this resting point and he ventures into new adventures among the stars, let yourself rest as well, knowing that heroes continue their journeys whether we watch or sleep, and that the universe is vast and strange and full of both wonder and danger, but also full of those who choose to stand and fight and protect. And that is enough to let us sleep peacefully, trusting that tomorrow will come and bring with it new stories and new chances for redemption and growth. So close your eyes now and let yourself drift. Let the weight of the day fall away. Let your breathing slow and your muscles relax. And know that you are safe and the story will continue, but you need not stay awake to see it. For sleep is calling and dreams are waiting, and both are gifts to be accepted with gratitude and peace. Good night and rest well.